subscribers. It's wonderful to have you along. My name is Kristy or Christiana, and I look after the tastings, normally with my colleague Andy, who you might recognise from various like Pour and Sip bits and bobs. And our live tastings are so much fun. I'm so pleased you're all here. It's going to be great. So first of all, if you are new, please get acquainted with the comments. We want to hear from you. We want to hear your tasting notes. We want to hear about your questions for our guests. We want to hear about everything that's going on. Get involved. There is no such thing as a silly question. If we're chatting away to our guests and it's like, what's that? Or I want to know more about that, get involved. We also love to hear your tasting notes. We taste through these 5 whiskies. We're going to do all 5 tonight, which is exciting. So yeah, get involved. I love to hear from you. I've already got some comments coming through. We've got Jake behind the scenes looking after that side of things. So yeah, get chatting. We'll welcome some people along. Plastic Fantastic's back, or I say he is back. He dipped in and is out again. He's going to watch back later, which is wonderful. Anthony Mullins is here. Jeff's here. Malcolm Tucker's here. Simon, long time since I made it to a live tasting. Well, welcome back. Great to have you. We have got, Jeff, Mike Pizarro, first live in ages again. A familiar face. Mike, you've been missed. Welcome back. TACD is here. Richard Wingrove is here. Stevie G is here after a few months away. Where have you all been? But I'm glad you're back. So let's give you a rundown of what you'll need. Obviously, you've got your 5 drams in front of you, which is excellent. Grab some water so you can sip as you go, clean those palates. We'll give you a rundown. We've got 3 guests this evening, which is fantastic. We're also going to do things a little bit differently. So I want to hear your feedback on this order. So we've got our 3 guests. Normally, we have our guests and then we do the other drams at the end. We are going to do them guest dram, guest dram, guest dram, till we get to 5. You get it. So if that works for you, if you want to do that again, let us know. If it feels a bit like, too much whiskey, actually we like them at the end, let us know. I'm always open to your feedback. So we're going to kick off with Armorik. We will find out. We have got Paul joining us all the way from France. He's literally in the warehouse, which is really exciting. So we'll go to him first and we can get really geeky about maturation and French whiskey, which is great. Then I'm going to chat a little bit about Kingsbarns Dream to Dram. That's dram number 2. Dram number 3, we've got our James Eadie, Teaninich. We've got Rupert here to have a chat about that. Then we're going to do a bit of a shallow paddle into Green Spot and some wine casks for a little bit. And then our 3rd guest is Fraser. We're doing the Port Charlotte last. It's all about the smoke, but don't be afraid. If you think you don't like smoke, I would say hang in there. You might discover you like something new. And this is the thing about Pour and Sip. We have got our old favourites and new discoveries, and that's how we like it. So yeah, welcome along. Mike Pizarro says, I love the Port Charlotte. I think I may have had a different year previously, which is great. I want to hear from you how they compare. Steve Cooper's here. Evening all, your Uncle Vanya. Hello, awesome whiskey lovers. Hello back. Bob Bryce is here. We've got Colin. Evening from Edinburgh, my first tasting in the world. We've got lots of people back. I love it. Yeah, how are you doing? Let us know. Right. Without further ado, I think we should get our first guest in because time is of the essence. So we are going to go literally all the way to France and welcome Paul. Let me zip him in. Hi, Paul. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm doing good. Good. I'm in the best place of the distillery here in the warehouse, as you mentioned. So this is a very, very nice place to just have the air here and all the aromas from the cask. So yeah, how are you doing?
I'm really well. Apart from I have major FOMO and so much envy because you're in a warehouse. Like you say, the aromas are incredible. Before we get on to you, for anyone who's not been in a whiskey warehouse, describe the smell to us. What is it like in there?
Here is a lot of oak and different places as well in the warehouse. You get some peat as well. You get some all of these fruits, and I mean, for everyone that has been in a warehouse, you know how very wonderful and like a fairy tale is it. And I come here like 2-3 times a week, and every time it's always very very nice to go in, especially the first minutes. That's where you have all the aromas, and then it just dissipates. You have to go out and then in again to get all this freshness back. So yeah, it's very very nice.
I love it. It's just incredible. Yeah, love it. If you've not been to a distillery, anyone watching, get yourself to one, get in those warehouses, immerse yourself. It's incredible. But Paul, tell us a bit about you. What do you do at Armorik and how did you get into whiskey?
Now I got, and that's good questions because how you get into whiskey, you don't get that asked a lot, and that's actually very, I think, important for most of us. Like this right moment when you had your first sip of whiskey, and and that just popped in your head. And that was a few years ago. I'm 25 years old, and it was maybe when I was 18 or maybe just under 18. And it was with a Bunnahaven, so Cruac Mona, peated whiskey. So
Yeah.
I'm a big peated whiskey lover since then. And I'm from Bretagne, so I'm from this place here. And there are not many distilleries in France back then in the 2000s. So as you could know, and there was not many options if you wanted to work in the whiskey industry. So I put all my efforts into working here, working and having the keys of this warehouse is like the biggest recognition you can have. So it happened 3 years ago that I got offered the job for export responsible and all the also product development part. I got a bit of it. So that's a very very nice offer to just be able to combine my passion and job.
Yeah.
So it started 3 years ago, and now I'm just traveling the world and make whiskey, French whiskey, and Breton whiskey known to other people. And I
Yes,
think
it's a
that's
hard life. Someone has to do it. So
exactly.
that is amazing. So give us a typical, I'm just pouring out the dram, got it right here. What is like a typical day for you? So you look after export, so I imagine you're chatting a lot to people all around the world. Yeah, what happens on a typical day in your job?
Actually, my best part. There are no days like the other because with export you travel just a lot, but my best moments are always these when I can just go around the distillery and show you virtually or in presence with people. These are like the best days to do. Just be here at the distillery, and as well coming. I was in Manchester 2 weeks ago to the Whiskey Lounge Manchester, so
Fantastic.
getting to you guys, and that was also fantastic days there. You have this Holy Spirit venue in big churches. In Manchester, it was very very big and nice church, so we really loved it there.
I love this.
And no typical day, I would say.
No, I like it. So tell us a bit about Armorik. Armorik. What is the correct pronunciation?
How you want. Armorik in French you say Armorik, so really all the air and so. But it depends on all your accents or so. It can be everything.
I guess
And Armorik is good. Yeah, sorry.
as long as we're drinking it and we love it, it doesn't matter so much.
Yeah, and that you know that it's from Bretagne. That is very important to us.
Yeah.
It's really from our land, and everything is done here on site. It's a craft distillery, and it's the pioneer. So the first one to have done whiskey 40 years ago in France. And it's also in Bretagne, so this very particular Celtic part of France. And we have a very good climate for all the aging. We have quite good wood as well. We have our own cooper. We produce our own oak casks with a local cooper, and that is something we are building more and more. We just bought a building in the city to build our own cooperage, and this is going to be just crazy. It's like very unique in the world to be able to build your own casks. And new oak, most of it, and also repair the casks that we have here. Behind me are many bourbon casks. That's what we have the most here at the distillery. And after 4 or 5 times of using 20 years, I would say, we have to always repair them. And they are usually shipped to Portugal or to Cognac region where they have big cooperage. But then now being able to do it ourselves and have everything in our hands, it will be even better. We are independent distillery, privately owned, with one director that cares about everything. We're around 22 to 24 people now. The team is building up every year, and this is a lot about the passion here, how it started and how it's going now.
Yeah.
We don't do bulk. We don't like sell a lot of whiskey in bulk or from the still to others. We keep everything here in stock for Armorik, and that's why we have like the biggest stock in France. We have like 5,000 casks. Might sound ridiculous for people from maybe from UK, but for us it's like very big stock in France. So
It's very cool. Very, very cool. So I have got loads of questions for you. I'm just going to go through some tasting notes that everyone's sharing first. because I've got lots of questions for you about maturation, about geographical indications, and also I want to taste the dram with you as well. So we've got a lot to get through. So Anthony Mullins is getting cherry on the nose. The bird is the word 91. Welcome back, pretending it's Friday. Thanks for joining us. Simon, hint of wood and cherry as well. Lots of cherries and banana from Joe F. It also says it reminds him of Bren French whiskey, which we've had on here before, which is really interesting. Kevin B, lots of dark fruits for me and a little smoke, I think. Joe, cherry bakewell and dark chocolate. It's all about the cherry. Colin Bathgate, bakewell cherry, yes. I'm going to rattle through these. We do read them all, but for the interest of time, we're just going to skim them. But I love them. The more, the merrier. Peter Gilmore gets trifle. It's making me hungry. Steve Coleman Williams goes well with the apple and black pudding sausages I have in front of me. I love it. We've got live food tasting going on there. Jim Clancy says it's very different. We've got lots more cherry notes. Jeffster, considering it's 46%, it's pretty unassuming. I get the old fruit salad sweets to start. It takes a while to hit the taste buds. And then Mike Pizarro is on the oat crackers and brie. So enjoy your tasty snacks while dramming it. And if there is a particularly good pairing, let us know. So yeah, we're starting on the tasting, which is amazing. Talk to us a little bit about what a geographical indication is and why it's so important to you guys. We're going to get really nerdy, then we'll taste the whiskey, and then we'll get nerdy again.
I see someone studied because I didn't say geographical indication, I think, but yes, someone saw that we have one. It's this whiskey Breton. So that's all the bottles you would see in Bretagne with this mention. That means we have done everything on site, and that we use pot stills if we do single malt, so really coppers pot stills. You can also find them on the internet, our pot stills. Unfortunately, can't go there right now. It's end of the day now, and it's also the water that you use, the bottling. It's actually all the rules that are from Scotland that we apply to our region, but with one difference is that we can also use buckwheat, which is this very particular, not cereal. It's not a cereal, but almost, and that you can also distillate. And this is very particular for us. Also, we do a lot of galette and crêpe that you might know with this wheat. So this is also very Breton. That we don't have at the distillery. It's another distillery that is the second biggest one in Bretagne that also that use buckwheat.
Yeah, that is
also very interesting.
I was going to say, I have so many questions, but you preempted Jeffster's question. He was asking how it's different from Scotch. So the buckwheat you've mentioned, how difficult is that to work with? And do you put it in with the malted barley? Does it like go into the sort of the mash tun together? Like talk to us about how that works.
So we don't use buckwheat. That's another distillery that's here. So yeah, you might have to ask them and I think it's a big secret for them because it's like very difficult to do. But we also have some cask of buckwheat that we distillated 20 years ago. But now it's really a style that we let to them, and we have all the single malted. So it's really one is doing buckwheat, one is doing single malt.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And at Armorik, it's really also about wheat. We use a lot of wheat and a lot of rye. That's the three cereals that we use. And the pot stills we have are only used for whiskey. So we don't put any fruits in it. And that's, puts it apart from many, many distilleries in France that will use also for doing gin, for doing other spirits. We only use it for really for whiskey.
That's very cool. So before we taste this, I'm going really like off on one now. With your rye and with your wheat, do you release those as like 100% rye, 100% wheat, or do you do like sort of blends and grain whiskies as a result?
Now we have some 100% rye, but not any 100% wheat for now. That's for sure. Doing a single grain is in our ambition, but we have much more barley than rye or wheat at this distillery. So wheat is like, I just have a. You hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you. We got you.
Yeah, I have a problem with my. Is it good now? You hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. We're all good.
Okay, good. And the wheat is very, very rare here at the distillery. So it's not that logic, but we have like maybe 10% of all our stocks is wheat. Yeah. So we are focusing much more on single malts, which is also what we love the most here. Yeah. But we have one blend that will come next year or end of 2023. It's called the Braise, and it's 65 to 70% of wheat within 30% of barley, which is very particular. You usually see much more barley than wheat in a whiskey. Much more, wheat than barley. Or what did I say? We have 65% barley and 35% wheat, which is the other way around, really.
Yeah, that's
Much more barley. Yeah, much more barley than
yeah.
wheat.
I can't wait to taste that. I can't wait to taste it. It sounds fascinating. But talk to us about, let's taste through this one together. So sherry cask. This is an Oloroso cask whiskey. Tell us a bit about that cask, where it's come from, how long it's been aged for, and then we'll have a little nose.
I can't directly show you those casks. So this is Sherry Oloroso, and it's 5 years only in sherry.
Ooh.
Which is something not very often seen also in the whiskey blends. So these all here are the sherry from American oak, and here I have Spanish oak as well.
There they are. That's so exciting. We're like live from the warehouse seeing the cask.
Yeah.
It's very, very cool.
Exactly, and those are the 500 liters, so like our biggest butts that we have here. And the Spanish oak is this one that gives all this spiciness at the end of the whiskey. And all the American oak you have is much older casks. They are 20 years of age within sherry inside, so they have a lot to give. Yeah, a hell lot to give. But it's a 5 years old whiskey, only in sherry, so exclusive sherry. And those 20 years old American oak, they give all those old wood style, this cacao, dark chocolate that you guys can feel.
Definitely. I'm getting so much like dark fruit, raisins, a bit of cinnamon, like definitely cherry. Everyone's talked about dark cherry so much. It feels a bit like a chocolate dessert. I'm here for it.
I get a lot of cacao and orange notes. And it's really a whiskey for those time of the year. Even if it's very fresh, it has this warming feeling at the end, and all the spiciness to it, the old wood style with it. And it's only a 5 years old, but you can also see it from the color of the whiskey. It's very, very sherried from the cask.
Do you bottle it natural color?
Oh, it's natural color, yeah. Or non-shell filtered as well. You can feel it. It's very this oiliness that you get in the mouth as well. We try to keep it fully traditional when we do our whiskey, so that we can really export it, and also that we can enjoy it as a passion. So to do it very the traditional style of it, and it's 46 degrees as well, so you get that very longer after finish with it. So
it's a weighty beast. I love it. I'm just going to read out some more taste notes. We've got so many coming in. Steve Common Williams is getting rhubarb and custard boiled sweets with a spice I can't put a name on. I know what you mean about that spice at the very end on the palate. It is warming and spice. What spice?
Yeah, just like little pepper. Yeah, at the end.
Yeah, definitely. Real Boinger on the palate. The chocolate comes through very strong, a bit woody with persistent cherry undertone. Anthony Mullins, it comes across as a really sweet taste, very berry sweet, which I love. Clive Hampton, it really reminds me of Johnny Walker Red for some reason. Lots of fruit and sherry taste and a good peppery finish. I like it. Anthony Mullins, oh wow, that went down a bit too easily. A whole bottle could be dangerous. I mean, check out the member store. You'll get your discount if you want a bottle. Simon says he loves that we're getting the warehouse experience today to add to the tasting experience, which is, I am loving it. Chocolate.
Yeah, sorry you can't get the smell of all of this here. You have to come here. But this is also incredible.
It's so good. And then Jim Glancy, a good pudding whiskey would be great with a dark chocolate mousse. Yeah, I really think so. So talk to me a little bit about, obviously this is a full maturation sherry. Just as a side effect, Steve Common Williams has asked to talk about sherry casks, which we'll do later. Don't worry, Steve, we'll go into it. So this is full maturation. So for anyone who doesn't know, it's a lot for a whiskey to be in a sherry cask for 5 years. Most people might finish it for like a year, 2 years would be a long time, maybe 6 months even. But what was your decision process behind going for full maturation with a sherry?
Now we have worked a lot with Jim Swan. Maybe some of you might know about him. He worked also with Penderyn, Kilchoman, a few distilleries also in Asia like Kavalan
Mhm.
or M&H in Israel, and he really had this uh, yeah view on the whiskey that you put something in a cask and you just wait for it to evolve,
Mhm.
and that was the process behind a lot of our whiskeys. We don't do like short finishes, and if you want to do a sherry cask, just don't just put the name on the whiskey. Just really do only sherry casks.
Mhm.
Of course, it's not a brutal sherry cask with only first fill. We use second fill. We use some American oak, some Spanish oak as well, and it's a blend of around 10 to 20 casks that we do
Yeah.
every time we do the whiskey. So it's something that is more and more precise the more and more we get cask also to to make the blend of this single malt.
Yeah.
And yeah, the process behind it is just delivering something that not many do, a full sherry cask fresh, and that has not a finish but very exclusive.
Yeah, it's delicious. It's so flavoursome and so weighty in your mouth, like you say, because it's not until filtered. It's a joy. It's like luxurious and decadent. I like it.
Yeah.
So we've got a question for you from Malcolm. Is the Armorik distillery open to visitors? Can people come and see you? Could we all get on the Pour and Sip coach and come and hang out?
Yeah, right now. Yeah. You can get a ferry from your side and then come to Roscoff. It's like a city 1 hour from us, and just get from there to us. And all year long we have visits, and it's like 2 3 visits a day, even more in the summer. And yeah, we are in a very touristic actually area. So you get the pink granitic coast. If you Google it, you will see it's just beautiful. And yeah, it's worth the travel to see the distillery and then see all around our region. Here is Bretagne, as you might know, it's very beautiful as well.
Yeah, amazing. I think everyone's planning their holidays for next summer now. I mean, I would love to visit. We will get there. Just a few more comments before we wrap up. Jester, not that it needs water, but a little drop does open it up. Probably a good one to introduce whiskey to someone who says they don't like whiskey, which I think is a great point, actually. This is
Yeah,
so fruity. I think people will really, really get on with it. We've got Real Boinger, that chocolate stays in the finish with ginger and finally black pepper. We've got Mike Pizarro. I think someone's talking about chocolate oranges, which is also giving me chocolate orange envy. Do you know, do
exactly. Yeah,
you have the chocolate oranges? Like, it's a
yeah,
Christmas
yeah.
tradition there.
That's exactly what I get in the glass. Exactly. Yeah,
It's,
that you eat for Christmas. That grandma brings. So yeah, exactly. It's
I'm seeing a brand partnership on the Armorik horizon. And then Richard Wingrove is on the Madagascar dark chocolate. He's going to go dig it out and see how it complements. I think. Do you ever do whiskey and food pairings?
sorry, I didn't get the question.
Do you ever do whiskey and food pairings with Armorik? Do you ever do whiskey, cheese, whiskey and
Yeah.
chocolate, any of these things?
Yeah, we do with sherry cask. Actually, I did a few times with some old Parmigiano or some old cheeses, and that really works well. Or if you wanna be very for dessert, yeah, of course with the chocolate. If it's not a too sweet dessert, then it really goes well with it, yeah, for sure. Because the spiciness of it will just cut all the sweet, and yeah, works definitely very well.
Amazing. Well, I am having a wonderful time with the dram, but I'm now also very hungry. And thank you so much for coming to have a chat with us. I know you have to rush off for dinner, so you won't be
Oh
doing
yeah.
it.
You
But
thank you.
if anyone's got any questions for Paul, pop them in the chat and we can always email them through. So if you missed your chance to talk to Paul, you haven't, don't worry, we can put you in touch. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, for having me. Yeah, goodbye.
It's been
Have a
a
good
joy.
evening.
Cheers. Have a good one. There we go. Fantastic. That was amazing. I really, really do get the chocolate orange vibe so much on this. And it's also making me think of Cadbury's fruit and nut as well. Basically, we've got the same thing we always have, where Kristy hasn't had her dinner and really regrets it on Pour and Sip. Yeah, love all your tasting notes. Thank you so much for sending them through. Colin says, thank you for this sherry fruit chocolate, not too sweet for my palate. It was a really good opening dram, and also good to know that they're open visitors. I haven't been to a French distillery before, so yeah, I think that's a good one. Brilliant. So a couple of things before we have a very, very brief taste of the Kingsbarns. I'm going to put it in my glass, but as I say, a couple of minutes, and then we will move on for our next guest in a couple of minutes' time. Don't forget, for anyone who's in the market for an advent calendar, we have our very own Pour and Sip one. So go and check it out in the members store. Lots of fun to have a drama day in the Christmas run-in. It's a mix of sort of our favourites from the last year or so. So especially if you're new to Pour and Sip and you think, oh, this is fun, I want more, definitely grab it. Discounts to be had, go check it out, which is amazing. And also, we had a very brief question earlier, which I'll touch on very briefly now before we taste the Kingsbarns, around sherry casks. So over on the Master of Malt blog, I kind of like came across this while interviewing some other people. And the piece, do read it over on Master of Malt, is basically about how we just talked about using sherry casks in whiskey. So the Armorik has been in a sherry cask for 5 years. I'm very bad at maths, but that puts it in the post everything being authenticated window. So we're not talking about Armorik with this. Essentially, historically, and the sherry, the equivalent of the Scotch Whisky Association in sherry, has they've stepped in to monitor this now. But essentially, a lot of sherry casks were seasoned with wines that didn't make them, like they couldn't be classified as sherry. That either had been grown and made outside the designated sherry area, or they hadn't been made to the appropriate processes. And just to really clarify, this doesn't mean that the whiskies involved are bad at all. For me, it's very similar to a few years ago where we had the sort of the big realization that some Japanese whiskies were essentially blends with Japanese and Scotch whiskey. And the whiskies were great. Nika from the Barrel was one of them. It's one of my all-time favorite drams. The issue there wasn't that the whiskey was bad, it was that there was no transparency. So that's what that discussion is about. So yeah, any more questions on that, I would say go and read the blog at Master of Malt after Pour and Sip, obviously. But for now, we are not going to have a sherry cask dram. We're going to spend a couple of minutes, I've already poured it, chatting about Kingsbarns, which is a wonderful new little distillery in Scotland. So we've gone from France over to Scotland. This was distilled in 2015. I believe it was one of their very first single malts, which is really exciting. And I think, similar to what Paul was saying about, the dream whiskey job, I think if you were ever going to start a distillery, the feeling that you would get when your first whiskey comes of age and you can drink it, I can't even imagine. So huge kudos to the Kingsbarns folks. So it's a really interesting setup. They eventually, to get some funding and stuff like this, partnered with the Weems Malts folks who, they do lots of like different whiskeys. Definitely have a Google, really worth looking into. And yeah, so they are one of the older new distilleries in Scotland, not as old as Coolholman, but yeah. And this is a lowland distillery. We don't have that many lowland distilleries. They're all in Speyside, lots in the Highlands, obviously over in Islay in the islands. So lowlands tend to be typically a bit lighter, because as we know, these whiskey regions don't always stick to their traditional formats anymore, which is great. Love a bit of flavour experimentation. But this is been matured in a Heaven Hill cask. So any bourbon lovers, you'll definitely get loads of that going on in here. But there's also some STR casks going on. What that is, shaved, charred, retoasted. Yeah, like rejuvenated, basically. I'm going to get all them all wrong in order. Yeah, shaved, toasted, recharred. Perfect. All that means is you're basically doing everything you can to that cask. Often they've been seasoned with maybe like a wine or something, but you're doing everything to get as much as you can from that cask. So much flavour. And I think you really get that on this. I think it is really tropical fruit, lots of that from the bourbon. You get a lot of sweetness coming through from the grains, which is really, really wonderful. And I also get like some kind of like baking, cooking, banana bread, maybe cinnamon notes. But there's definitely a big bourbon influence here. So I'm just going to literally have one sip and then we'll move on for our next guest. So we'll get Rupert, we'll give him a little 30-second heads up. But yeah, I really enjoy Kingsbarns. And I know not everyone's drinking all 5 drams tonight. That's fine. Enjoy it later on. Let us know what you think. I really, really love it. So just to catch up, we've got Anthony Mullins went to a cognac distillery earlier this year. Very, very cool. Obviously, other spirits other than whiskey are available. They are very delicious. Very light colour on this from Peter Gilmore. Real boiling. It's very light, delicate on the nose, bananas and berries. I'm very here for you with bananas. Mint and vanilla. Oh, yeah, I think it's loads of that bourbon influence. Some of those STR cast influence. It's great. So one little sip for me. Delicious as always. I do like it. And now we're going to get our second guest on. So let's go to Rupert. We're going to stay in Scotland for this one. And it's, very exciting. Let's bring him in. Rupert, how are you doing? How was your evening?
Yeah, really well. You've sort of caught me sort of drinking already. So maybe I'm slightly ahead of the game, a bit cheaty. But yeah, it's been a great day.
Wonderful. I don't think there is any such thing as being cheaty with a dram of whiskey. You sit back and enjoy your dram.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. So tell us a little bit about you. Who are you and how did you get into whiskey and what is your role in whiskey now?
Oh, crikey. Got into whiskey in 1990. Having had, I started off into the wine trade. My lovely father, who's 94 years old, he's a master of wine. So I grew up knowing about wine.
Yeah.
I studied it in France and California, and everything was directed to the wine trade. And then I got derailed, and the W for wine changed to the W for whiskey. I replied to an advert. I was living in the south, living near in Bedfordshire, and a job advert came up for Ian MacLeod, otherwise known as Peter Russell Distillers back then. So I sent off an application thinking, oh, good interview practice. I'll never get the job. And I've never even thought about living in Scotland. And anyway, Peter Russell rang me up the next day and the rest is history. I moved to Edinburgh, worked for 13 years for Ian MacLeod and absolutely loved it. And I learned so much working for that small independent family business with Peter, the most brilliant man. I mean, he was already just about retired then, but I learned a huge amount from him. I got into whiskey slightly by default.
Amazing. I love this story already. So just in case anyone doesn't know, you just briefly mentioned that your father being an MW. What's an MW?
Oh, Master of Wine. So I think there's about 350 in the world. It's a very difficult qualification. You can do the diplomas through the Wine and Spirit Education Trust. You can do the first two diplomas, and then the big one is the Master of Wine exam. And even if I was in the wine trade, I'm sure I would have failed it many times over by now. It's incredibly difficult. You've got to be completely brilliant, not only on nosing and tasting, but on everything else. So, huge respect for my father, who is a whiskey drinker more than a wine drinker now in his old age.
I love that you brought him over to the whiskey side.
I did. I still struggle to get him away from drinking J&B there. I'm clearly not a very good salesman because so just telling you a little bit more. So I worked for MacLeod's, and I worked for Jim Beam. So I managed Teachers and Lefroy and lovely brands like that. I was an international sales manager for 7 years, and then luckily I did 3 years at Diageo. So I was selling Johnny Walker and all the Diageo brands, including Guinness, particularly in Africa. And I never ever thought that I would do what I've done now, or re-establishing James Eadie. It just didn't occur to me to do it. I mean, I knew a little bit about this family history. My mother was an Eadie, and her great grandfather James Eadie, had an amazing beer business and an amazing whiskey business. But it was all dead and buried. Nothing had been done since the 1950s. And anyway, long story short, I revived the business in 2016.
Incredible. So, just in case anyone doesn't know, who was James Eadie, and why are you so excited about bringing his name back?
Oh, well, just the more I've learned about him, that when you dig into a bit of history and you learn more about somebody, he's just the most incredible guy. I mean, he was 14 years old when he decided to leave Scotland. He was brought up in Blackford, which is where Tullibardine Distillery is. Way before Tullibardine Distillery was there. There was 2 breweries there. So he ventured south, like a lot of Scots did, and ended up doing tea blending in Staffordshire. And then he got into malting barley. And then he got into making beer, and his first sort of production was 2 casks a week, 2 barrels a week. And anyway, he built the James Eadie Brewery into quite a big beer business. He had 300 pubs, and it was a great business. And meanwhile, his parents and his father were still making the whiskey, the James Eadie whiskey up in Scotland. So suddenly the boy down south has done well, and he's got all these pubs, and he starts selling the James Eadie whiskey in the pubs. So it became, quite a well-known whiskey brand in and around Staffordshire and Derbyshire. But sadly, my grandfather sold the business. It's typical, 3 generations in a family business. It all goes to pot. So it disappeared and died. Mind you, the 1930s were a very, very difficult time for anybody to survive in wine, spirits or beer. But all the records, all the archives were there, sitting in the National Brewery Archive in Burton. And when Leon Kubler, my sort of right-hand man and brilliant employee, when he and I went to Burton, we just found all this amazing material, including details of every whiskey that James Eadie sort of ever bought, sold, blended. We've got all his blending books. It's absolutely fabulous treasure of whiskey history.
That is incredibly cool. So again, we are very nerdy here at Pour and Sip, or I am, and everyone humours me. One of my big life goals is to go to like the Diageo archive, because I can't get enough of whiskies from the past, what was being bought and sold, what was being blended with what people were really into at the time, like the trends of the day. So what did you discover when you found this ledger and all of the history?
Well, we saw, I mean, it was just amazing detail in those books, beautiful handwriting, it puts us all to shame nowadays.
Don't look at them.
So we saw every single distillery that he was buying, and you could then see when he blended it, what he blended it with, and therefore how the blends were composed. And when we first started looking down the list, it was, crikey, he's got Talisker, he's got Lagavulin, he's got Glendronach, Aberlour, Dalhuan, Blair Athol, Glenturret, I mean, Little Mill, and it was, wow, this must have been a great whiskey. This must have been fantastic. So, we went away and thought, that's a stupid question you ask yourself. Could we put it back together again? Could we sort of put the team back together? Now, we did, as it happened, but we were two distilleries short because they were shut down around 1900. But the other 14, 12 malts, 2 grains, are in the blend.
Amazing.
So we revived the business, did the blend, and then obviously started buying casks from lots of people, lots of old friends in the trade, and then set up as an independent bottler at the same time. And I'd done independent bottling back in the 80s, sorry, not the 80s, the 90s, when it was just starting out. And I wanted to get back to the same ethos that we had in the 90s, which was bottle really good casks, be really scrupulous about every single cask that you put out to the market, knowing that if you do a bad one, people will spot you. If you do 2 bad ones, your reputation is gone. So we're really particular, and also try and give really fair value, because since then, obviously in the 90s, prices have gone up dramatically. But in my view, I think the trade's been a bit greedy. I think margins can be a bit too high, and I think people are a bit short term in what they do. So we've set up, we're not in a rush. We're a very small business, and we're here for the long term. And we hope to continue to give really good value for money in what we do. And this Teaninich, I hope, is a great example.
I mean, absolutely. We'll get into this. Just a quick, we're getting a little bit of muffled sound from you, I think, but I think we're back now.
Okay. Is that all right?
Yeah, that's perfect. Yes. We can't lose you. There's too much to talk about. So I've seen a question come up. We've got quite a lot of tasting notes coming through, which I'll get onto in a second. But TACD has said, I don't recall seeing a specific cask number called out on the tasting notes card before. So we have all the subscribers, these little cards like this. So talk to us a little bit about this whiskey. So Teaninich 11-year-old 2010. We've got a cask number.
Here we go.
And this was bottled for Master of Malt. So how do you go around? So you go out into the market, you're like, I'm in the market for some of these casks, see what you've got, knows them all, they're great, bring them in. How do you work with people to like end up with a whiskey in a bottle like this?
Yeah, that's a very transparent question. The answer is very much, Master of Malt are a fantastic customer of ours, both for the Trademark X, our blend, but also for single malts. And we like doing exclusive single casks. From a production point of view, it's a whole lot better to do one cask for one customer than it is to split it up between 10 or 15. It's just easier and better. But also when you establish a relationship with a customer, it's really nice to try and pick out some really good stuff and say, look, would you like this as an exclusive? We'd love to select it for you. So yeah, that's how we do it. So each year we bottle in spring and autumn. We only do 2 releases a year, and at the same time we try and pick probably 5 customers, export customers that would like an exclusive cask, and then maybe just 2 or 3 here in the UK, and say, look, we've got these really outstanding casks. We'll give you first dibs on this, and would you like to do it? And so that's how this came about.
Amazing. Incredible. I'm going to read out some tasting notes. And we've got a question from Malcolm. I had a sneaky sip of the whiskey then because I've been nosing it and I could not wait any longer. So now I've gone ahead and gone a bit cheaty. So we've got, Where are we? We've got spicy caramel cream on the nose with dried fruit and nuts, maybe spicy granola. That's from Real Boinga. Simon, Satsuma, sweet honey and caramel. Peter Gilmore, orange toasted nuts and bread. I'm with you on the bread. There's definitely like a toastiness in there. Anthony Mullins, very spicy, a bit buttery oak to finish. I love it. Malcolm Tucker, orange and caramel. I feel like on the first one we had loads of cherry. Now we've got loads of orange, which is great. Steve Common Williams, very spicy. Paprika, I think. Lemon and salted butter. Mike Pizarro, nose is subtle after the last one. Getting roast almond and a little salted butter. Sounds great. Peter Gilmore, quite rich and a kick to it, but in a good way. And Anthony Mullins agreeing on the paprika. We've got Ali. This is really nice. Surprisingly smooth for the ABV. Crunchy nut cornflakes, hint of marmalade on rye. Would it be wrong to have a breakfast whiskey? No, well, the sip, don't gulp. Responsible drinking anytime. Malcolm Tucker's question to you, which is a great one. Are there any historic blends from the archive that you still want to produce?
Oh, yes, that's a very, very spot on. And I can't give away too much here, but yes.
You can, you're among friends.
The up behind me, hold on, I'll just grab it. This is a bottle of the original. Well, this was the last bottling of James Eadie.
Oh, look.
In 1948. It looks a bit like a beer bottle, and no doubt they were putting beer out in this sort of bottle. But the fill height, I don't know if you can see it, it's right up to here, which is a brilliant fill height for that sort of age of whiskey. My uncle, Alistair Eadie, who was also in the whiskey trade, he gave me this. And I managed to get another couple. So we opened one, and there is a little clip on YouTube somewhere with Dave Broom and myself and Tom Bruichladdich tasting it. And it was absolutely astonishing. And I want to reproduce it. I want to get as close to that as I can. It will be a £100 bottle of whiskey or thereabouts. Very heavily sherried. So yeah, that's what I want to do. And we know what was in there. So we're gonna, it might be next year, it might be the year after, but we're definitely going to do it. And we're going to get the packaging to look a little bit similar. Yeah. I love the retro feel of that.
I'm saying I love the typeface. I think it's beautiful. Yeah. But I'm literally like, I feel like there's a film or a screenplay or something in this. Like going back, it's like being a whiskey detective to like read. Yeah. Very cool.
Sort of, looking back. So I just we try and recreate also the sort of, the atmosphere and the culture of who James Eadie was. He was a pretty quiet chap, and his obituary read, he was hardworking, very much, huge perseverance, indomitable perseverance, which I think every entrepreneur has to have, because you go through ups and downs that for most people would make you, run and get another normal job and have somebody else pay your salary. I like what I've learned about him, and we want to try and recreate this sort of very much sort of patient way of approaching the Scotch whisky business, which as your other guest said, you can't hurry Scotch. It's just, or whiskey. It's a slow game.
Yeah.
And if you hurry it, you tend to cut corners, and you get found out.
Definitely. Right. Time is of the essence. So tell us about this dram. So we've got Teaninich 11-year-old. What do you get on it when you nose and taste it?
Well, you were talking about, somebody talked about breakfast. On the nose, all those sort of words came to my mind. And when I tasted earlier, I wrote down panna raisin. That lovely, fresh, crisp panna raisin, which you get the bready note, but you get the raisins. And for me, that was the way to encapsulate what you get on the nose. A little bit of butterscotch for sure, a little bit of almond, but very this sort of. Well, I normally have a panna raisin at about 11 o'clock, so it's normally before I have a whiskey. But that's the moment. But then on the palate, I sort of I said it was like almost a bowl of Alpen with a little bit of Greek yogurt on it, and maybe a berry. It's sort of it's a bit of a mix. And the other point that somebody else raised, I love the fact that it's so approachable, even at 54.3.
Yeah, completely.
You can add a splash of water if you want to, but it's one of those drams that unfortunately slips down rather too easily. And also the finish, it's 16 months in that first fill Amontillado cask, and you'd think it would be more overpowered. The colour's beautiful, but this distillery character of Teaninich, which is very well known, is still there, and that's one of the real sort of for us sort of must do's is don't spoil the distillery character completely by a finish. if that happens, it can be a nice accident if it does. If it's a real sherry bomb and everybody loves it, great. But ideally, we check our finishes every 3 months. We get samples from the casks, and that gives us just about the right time to say stop. It's gone far enough. So yeah, be really careful with finishing, because you can overdo it.
Definitely. And I feel very strongly about this. I was talking about someone the other day about how I do just love, oftentimes, not exclusively, a bourbon cask, because you get to taste that distillery character. And you're right, you absolutely have this in this. Like, there is a bit of that sherry, but I would almost struggle to pick out the finish. Like, there's something extra, but it's just subtle and beautiful. And I think it really adds to it, which is amazing. We have got more tasting notes come in. I'm absolutely loving this. Steve Coleman Williams, a couple of drops releases some of the flavors. Malcolm Tucker says he looks forward to seeing the new blend that you mentioned when it comes to market. Steve Coleman Williams is musing about how much the old bottle is worth. TAC.
Well, not very much is the answer to that.
Oh, really?
We're such a small company still. Why would it be worth a lot? It might be. I mean, there's none around. I mean, I remember I had a meeting with Sukhinder Singh about 5 years ago when I was setting this business up. We had a bit of a chat, and I said what I was going to do. So James Eadie said, I've got one of those bottles, and he went onto his computer, and I was praying that he didn't, and sure enough he didn't, which was wonderful. So if he hasn't got it, then nobody's got it.
Exactly. He's like a super collector. For anyone who doesn't know, Sukhinder, he has, like, I would say 99.9% bottles of scotch. You found one he doesn't have, so that's an impressive thing. We've got Mike Pizarro. This is raising the bar for, quote, complex, challenging and delicious. Very tempting to get one of these. Mike Pizarro, water makes it a bit too bittersweet for me. I mean, this is the joy of whiskey. You can have completely different ones when you add water. Colin, this just gets better with every sip. It's lovely. And Jim, far too easy to drink, very dangerous. But yes, sip, don't gulp, folks. Sip, don't gulp. But yeah, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for coming on to have a chat, Rupert. What's next for James Eadie? What should we be looking out for?
The autumn releases are just hitting the store now. Yeah. I think Master and Malt will have them live in a day or two.
Excellent.
We were hoping to get them live for today, but so about 8 new whiskies are coming out in a day, and please go and have a look at those, because they are fabulous. And then we'll do another bottling next spring. Yeah. And we have got a little project. Some of you will know that we published a book this year, The Distilleries of Great Britain and Ireland, 1922 to 1927.
Ooh, tell us about this. This is interesting.
It's material. Somebody visited all the distilleries in Britain and Ireland between 1922 and 27 and wrote them up in a very much Barnard style. But the difference is, it wasn't Barnard, it was somebody else, and there was photographs.
Amazing.
The first sort of proper photographs of distilleries. So Leon, my colleague, found this material in the British Library, and over 7 years he typed it all up, produced it, and then got the permission from the library to reproduce all the photographs. And it is a big old book. I mean, it's a 650-page book that we did 1,000 limited edition copies. So that's out. It'll be sold out by the time Christmas presents are done. So watch out. But we've got another one. We've got another thing coming out next year, which is even more exciting, and it will be connected with something in a bottle too. So that's my teaser. I'm really excited about it, and I'm so grateful to Leon because he's doing all the work behind it.
I mean, yeah, if you've got someone to write the book, research, do the photos, and you can sip the dram while reading the finished product, that's the way to do it.
Well, it's going to involve a little bit of experimentation and going to some distillers and saying, would you try this for us?
Ooh.
Now I better go now because I'm going to tell you far too much.
I mean, it's boundary pushing. We like it. Are you able to hang around and have a dram?
Yes, I will, definitely.
Amazing. So any questions for Rupert, put them in the chat and we'll get on back to you at the end. Thank you so much. What a joy. We'll catch you again in a bit.
Thank you.
See you later. Oh, love that. Honestly, my inner geek who wants to nose around loads of archives has been set alight. I feel like, every time we have a pour and sip, I'm like, right, need to do this, need to do this, need to do this. Love it. On the list now is to go and suss out James Eadie's old ledgers because I reckon there's some good stuff in that. Amazing. Thank you so much all for your tasting notes as well. There's so many to get through, but this was gorgeous. Really, really love it. So yeah, as I say, check out the Pour and Sip shop. We'll do a little couple-minute spiel on Green Spot before we get Fraser in for the last dram of the day. So this is a really interesting one for me. And in a way, I should have kept Fraser on to ask him about the wine cask involved in this. So Green Spot, classic Irish whiskey. We absolutely love this. Green Spot, you might know Red Spot. They did a Blue Spot, and there's lots of them going on. And this was distilled at the Middleton Distillery, so near Cork, Southern Ireland. Sadly, my Irish geography isn't amazing, but love it. And I think you might know Adam from Master, from what I know, he's been to visit a bunch of times, and I have severe FOMO because I have never been. Malcolm, I've just seen your question come through. We'll hold that one for the end and come back to it. But yeah, Green Spot, I absolutely love. What I love about the Spot whiskies is they have this real unctuous, like, oiliness to them, which is great. What's interesting about this one, Chateau Montelena, is it's got wine casks going on. Again, really will just like rattle through this because we could talk about this one for like hours on end. This has the wine in this is like Zinfandel, which is a great type. When I think about pink Zinfandel or white Zinfandel, I think it is. I think sugary sweet hen party vibe. This is not that wine. This is like an old like red Zinfandel. So with grape types, again, not an expert, do whiskey, not wine. But what I think you get with this is so much fruit character. I think it's really sweet, and I think it's gorgeous with that oily unctuousness. So again, if you're saving this for another day, let us know on social media what you think of it. If you're having a quick sip in those now, let us know. Malcolm Tucker's like digging in a bit, knows cherry blossom, furniture polish, and toffee. I'm completely with you on the furniture polish of this one. I think it's really, really interesting. I just have my notes down here about this is Napa Valley wine. I don't know if I said that. So real like premier, kind of like big, full-bodied winemaking region, like Northern California, just north of San Francisco. Yeah, really, really very cool. Bird is the word, just got a load of grapefruit on the nose. David Stanton's on sweet barley, honey, apples, tropical fruit. There's a lot going on in this, not going to lie. So I'm going to have a little sip, but I'm going to save most of this to come back to because I think it is one to really savour. Malcolm's got banana, chocolate, it's all coming in, clove spice, orange. Colin, I do like an Irish whiskey. They're so easy to drink. Redbreast is my current favourite, so looking forward to trying this. And then Mike has got orange peel, a bit cakey. It is so cakey. Like, I think it's the like oiliness, as if you're like actually got kind of like, I guess you put butter in a cake. I haven't baked a cake in years. But yeah, I love the banana vibes too. So I'm going to have a little sip and then we'll get our last guest of the night on. I was tasting this earlier, and I think one of my textural observations is that it's 46% ABV, but I guess maybe it's the mouthfeel. It's so velvety. Really get like the velvet vibes on this. It's so soft. You definitely get the fruit, definitely get the wine stuff going on, but yeah, really, really good. Simon's getting the furniture polish. Good stuff. Right. Are you all ready to get a little bit smoky for the last round of the night? So just before we zip Fraser in, give him his little 20-second warning. This basically, don't be afraid of peated whiskey. If you love peated whiskey and smoke, you're great. If you don't, I think you'll probably be great with this too. I think sometimes we think about peat and smoke and we're like, oh, too much. Stick with us. We'll give it a really good go. So here's Fraser. Let's bring him in now. Hey, Fraser, how are you doing?
Hello, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm really well, thank you. I'm having a lovely time. This is such a fun evening. We have had incredible whiskies, even better guests. What's not to like?
Yeah, great guests. Like you say, I kind of feel bad now because I could sit and listen to Rupert's stories all day, and Paul was amazing too. I kind of thought going into this I'd be the person with the most whiskey in the background, but Paul has clearly trumped me there. And Rupert was doing all right as well with the collection that he had behind him.
We've got, between us, we'd have a good party. Let's put it that way.
Okay, I'm sitting in the distillery's favourite meeting room, and even on a Thursday night at nearly 8:30, there's a queue of people outside waiting for me to finish here to come in and just gaze at the amazing bottles. The red are still right over my shoulder here. That's the one I always have my eye on, and it takes me all my willpower not to crack one open.
Do you ever get to have a little taste at the end of a meeting?
This is on camera, so I'll say no.
No, exactly.
You just never know.
Fantastic. So first of all, tell us about you. Who are you? What do you do over at, Bruichladdich, which is, same distillery as Port Charlotte for anyone tuning in who's not sure.
Exactly, yeah. So my name is Fraser Matthews. I'm one of the global brand ambassadors working for Bruichladdich Distillery on Islay. We'll get to Port Charlotte and where the name differences come in a little bit later on, I guess.
Yeah.
I've been working for the company for the past 7 years. I think, maybe I'm biased, but I think I had the best kind of tutelage and learning process. I actually started off, having left school, working in the visitor centre. So I got a job in there back in 2015 on a 6-month contract. So that was seasonal. It was March until the end of September. It was to help with the whiskey festival and the general busyness that we encounter on the island during the busier, I'm not going to say drier, but slightly less wet summer months, which then just kind of snowballed to the point where I've been able to progress, and not only doing stuff like this, but I get to do a little bit of traveling here and there as well. So based on the island, but always nice to be out in the market spreading the good word too.
Amazing. And also, I always forget, like, when people tune in from Islay now, having been a few times to the Islay Festival, connectivity is normally terrible. So I'm really glad we've got you. We've got a good line, and you're in the distillery. So that's
well, again, maybe for some folk watching, might remember some of our attempted releases, web exclusives. You might remember the Octomore BA, the OBA, or the X4 plus 10, where the bandwidth was just appalling. But I do understand we now have the best bandwidth on Islay, which is allowing me not just to come in without any issues, touch wood, but also in HD. Not that you want to see this face in HD, but I feel like I'm getting in the way of what you really want to see.
Of course we do. Of course. So fantastic. I have got the dram in my glass. I'm smelling it. It's aromatic. It's bonfirey. It's beautiful. But kick off telling us a bit about the Port Charlotte brandy. You mentioned how it's different from Bruichladdich. Give us the 101.
That's right. So Bruichladdich Distillery is the name of the distillery. Now, we are rather unique on Islay, and although this is a peated whiskey, we're unique because we are one of only 2 unpeated distilleries that are based on the island. Now, that doesn't mean all that we make is unpeated, and this one, as you've alluded to, is a heavily peated whiskey. But our production is broken down into the 3 different brands that we produce. So those are Bruichladdich, which is all completely unpeated spirit. There's also Port Charlotte, which is our heavily peated spirit, coming in at 40 parts per million. And then the little known name Octomore, that is the most heavily peated whiskey series on the planet, which for anyone who hasn't tasted it, I think it's something that you have to do. It's got to be on the bucket list somewhere. Even if you think you don't like peated whiskey, you've got to try that.
Yeah, definitely. And I would just say, anyone who's watching who isn't sure, like, stick with us and sort of treat it like a fragrance, I think, at the start. Like, it doesn't have to be scary. There's so much going on in this along with the smoke. So yeah, thanks for the rundown. I have so many questions for you about this dram, because I'll start off Islay Barley. I feel like Bruichladdich and obviously all of the associated brands are real pioneers with barley growing, varietals, all of this stuff. And this is with barley all from Islay, which is quite an achievement. It's not a hospitable environment for plants.
No, not at all. I don't know if you can hear it. I don't know how good the microphone is in this camera, but it is blowing a hoolie, as we say in these parts. We're well into winter here on the island, and even during the summer, the spring, and coming into the autumn, the weather really isn't favourable for growing barley. But this whole kind of ethos that the distillery has about exploring barley, which at the end of the day is one of only 3 ingredients that's used in whiskey, was inspired by the fact that the distillery was resurrected in 2001 after a period of closure in the 90s. It was resurrected by a group of people who had a combination of, Jim McEwen, who was the master distiller for us. We had Duncan McGilvery, who was our manager at the time. But our CEO and our co-founders were actually wine merchants. And they were amazed at the same ethos about, great variety and the terroir of the soil and how this impacts the wine that's produced and how one vintage can change to the next. They were quite amazed that wasn't really something that was commonly looked at in the whiskey industry. And they wanted to introduce that to whiskey consumers.
Incredible. So I was last with you guys, and so it must have been 2019. And I got to go on a little stroll to see some barley trials, because it's not just that this is barley from Islay. You are literally experimenting with loads of different varietals, which will have different tastes, right?
That's right, yeah. So we work now with, this year, 18 farmers growing barley for us. We're now at the stage where we have enough farms on board, and also that these farms are, the farmers are learning every year, and although they're up against it with the weather, and there are certain things that are out of their control, they are able to do little things to help to slowly increase their yields. We're now talking around about half of our annual production is made up of barley that's grown on Islay, which we're really proud of. But
that's incredible. That's actually really, really high.
Yeah, really, really impressive. But what you were alluding to there with the different varieties was an area of about 30 acres of land, just literally a stone's throw from the distillery that the distillery bought. I want to say back in 2017 or 18. And now, when purchasing this land, we knew that we had the opportunity to create something like maybe a croft style. So a croft is what we in Scotland call a small farm. So to grow the barley there, to distill it and make a true Bruichladdich version of our spirit. But then we kind of thought about it, and one thing that's become a lot more apparent to us as a company more recently is the fact that the farmers on Islay are up against it. That's not anything, unfortunately, that we can really do for that. There are little things such as trialing different barley varieties. So instead of going down the route of growing barley there, one variety, and distilling it and making this home croft style, what we decided to do was plant 70 different varieties of barley in a relatively small piece of land. See which ones did best, and maybe that would be some R&D, some good research for some of the farmers to venture into varieties that might give them better yields and ultimately make them more money further down the line, as well as more interesting varieties for us to distill.
Incredible.
So bad news on that side was that all 70 crops failed.
No, I was going to say, this is amazing. Like, let's celebrate this. But no, that must have been heartbreaking.
It was a little bit. We probably went into it a little bit too soon. So we're now giving that land some time to just recuperate. And we've got some sheep grazing on there just now. They're doing their thing, helping to fertilise and give some nutrients back to the soil. But it's certainly something that we're planning on revisiting in future.
Wow. That's so interesting, though. I will dig in more to this, but I'm very aware of the time, and also how many incredible tasting notes we have coming through for this. So bear with. I'm going to rattle through as many as possible, and I am loving this. So Steve Coleman Williams, I've been looking forward to this one. Clive Hampton, started on the Port Charlotte. I love smoke as my nose and palate are crap. No, there's no such thing. Like, we're here to enjoy whiskey. It doesn't matter how much ahead of you get, you're all good. Peter Gilmore, phrase it off the record, but a good whiskey session, I can imagine, lol, just in reference to, do you get to taste the end of the meeting? Real Boinger, a nose delicious smokiness, peat, woody and a bit nutty. David Stanton, honey candy, saline, oat cookies, vanilla smoke. Dave Dybel loves Octomore. Peter Gilmore, that's a kick, spice and bonfire smoke. The bird is the word. I was lucky enough for some post-COVID tastings. Must visit more of Scotland. You and me too. Love a Scotland trip. Lots of love for Octomore. Lots of love for Octomore. TACD, this is lovely. Peat isn't front and centre. It's present, but takes a backseat to cream and fruit. Exactly. There's so much going on in this dram. It's so much more than smoke. Anthony Mullins, I don't like peaty, but I love this. Yes. Joe F, big, ashy, smoky, seaweed, heated treacle. These are great tasting notes. Salted meat, vanilla, charred oak. There's a tangy orange to it too. Just going to rattle through some more. Colin, this is just stunning. Love the smoke, but there's so much going on here. Very creamy, lots of vanilla spice. Lost it, more have come in. TACD, I remember the Benriach Smoky 12 was another peated one that was very good, and I think this tops it. Olmos, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. A lot of bonfire peat on the nose, tons of fruits on the palate, very laddie. And then Joe F. Bruichladdich are masters of their craft. The range of flavour profiles they bring out and the quality of them is astounding. Very, very good. Mike Pizarro has just chimed in. This is possibly my favourite box ever. I think all the drams are great, but back to this one. So, Port Charlotte, this is an ongoing range, right? You do it every single year, from what I understand. And how much difference do we get batch to batch?
Well, the thing is, it's, again, we've had such a wide range there of tasting notes. And the thing is that everybody has their own interpretations. They all have their own ways of digesting and breaking down the whiskies. It's very much our belief, similar to, as I was saying earlier, to some of the best wine creators, that each vintage will give you a slightly different result. Now, they'll share that same character, that same Port Charlotte character, that gentle smoke, that you know, the spirit forward flavors, some green fruit. You'll get apricot in there as well. But one of the things that we deliberately do so as not to overpower the flavor of the barley or its influence is A, age it for too long, but B, dominate it with you know, dominant heavy cask type, similar to what Rupert was saying earlier. So these are whiskies that we age for. This one's an 8-year-old. And although it does have a small hint of wine as part of the maturation profile, it is predominantly a bourbon matured whiskey. And again, the idea there being not to overpower the flavour that comes from the barley. Now, when I poured this one earlier, on the nose, I was getting, I think we've had this one a lot. I've heard you for some of the other whiskies, but candied oranges, a lot of maltiness in there. But then going back to it now, I'm getting something completely different. What I'm getting now are more of the flavours that you tend to associate with classic Bruichladdich or Port Charlotte spirit. Now, all of our whiskies, Bruichladdich, Port Charlotte, Octomore, all of the spirit types are produced in the same stills and in almost exactly the same way. And so that base, that foundation flavour is always there. Those green fruits, apples, pears, apricot in there too.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
Which is, I think, the key thing, balanced with and not dominated by that peat smoke.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I just love it because I feel like all whiskies will evolve and change in a glass for sure. But this one, I feel like initially you're like, yeah, there's lots going on here, but it really stretches itself out. And it's almost like having a different dram. It's incredible.
Yeah, for me, that's the hallmark of a really good spirit, is you can go back to it, get something different every time, and it always keeps you coming back. But you know, on the taste, Slanjava.
Cheers. I was already sneaking a taste in, but cheers again. So good.
So you are getting that smoke in there, but it's really, really gentle. Again, it's not dominating. Again, maybe I am slightly biased, but we encounter people all the time who tell us they don't like peaty whiskey. And a lot of the time that is what introduces them and makes them love Bruichladdich so much. Because yes, it's an Islay, but it's unpeated. Sometimes the Port Charlotte is that gateway whiskey. I think a lot of people are of the mind that all peaty whiskey tastes the same. It's all just smoke. And, you know, of the 9 distilleries on Islay, the 7 or the particular really, really intense styles, they're all very different. Yeah. You know, and I think what Port Charlotte has is that approachability. The smoke is there, but it works in harmony with a lot of the other flavours in there.
Absolutely. This is amazing. I'm just going to read out some more taste notes. There are so many coming in, which is amazing. Jeff said, this is peated for those who don't like peated, kind of agreeing with you. Jeff is just recalling, he thinks he's once on a cellar tour with Fraser, which is great. Ali, this is powerfully good stuff, smoky and peaty on the nose, like someone has set fire to a coconut macaroon and orange creme caramel on the palate. That is an awesome tasting note. I love it. And Clive, I love this. I haven't put water in it or written any tasting notes. I've just enjoyed it. Superb. That's what you want in a dram.
That's what it calls for. You don't need to study it all. You just sometimes need to enjoy. But I think there's just one final tasting note, and I think this comes from the barley is a kind of salinity on the finish. Yeah. That's not, maybe salinity isn't the right way of putting it, but I think there's like a coastal or a maritime influence just that just sits on your palate, especially on the finish. That could be a multitude of things. I mean, the fact that the barley for this whiskey's grown on 7 farms around Islay. Yeah. If you're a farm in Islay, you're pretty near the coast anyway. And so when we've got these Atlantic weather systems battering the coast, all that salt's in the air. And I think it really does impact the barley. And all of our Islay barley releases have got that kind of maritime coastal influence.
Yeah, it's very, very cool. I know what you mean. For me, it almost shows up a bit like when you get almost like seaweed to eat, like crispy seaweed. It's something a bit reminiscent of that, which I really enjoy. And there are debates about what is that stuff that shows up as salt in whiskey? Because salt itself doesn't really go through the still, but you definitely get that vibe and stuff. Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's not so much that it tastes like salt water. I mean, it definitely doesn't. It's almost a seasoning. You know, you notice it's there.
and it's almost, you know, enhancing some of the other flavors that are in there. But it's an amazing whiskey, 50% ABV. That is our standard bottling strength for the core range. Of course, non-chill filtered, no added colouring either. So you really get those. You get the legs in the glass. I should probably have done this before I was drinking it. But then those oils, that really viscous texture really just coats your palate and gives you that long and lovely finish.
Yeah, it is incredible. Thank you so much for sharing it with us. So before we bring Rupert in about 30 seconds time, give us a quick rundown. What's next for you guys? What's next for the distillery? What should we look out for?
Well, there are some things in the pipeline, some pretty exciting stuff that I don't know if I can divulge too much on, but I think agriculture is a big thing with us. You know, whiskey is an agricultural product, and as with Islay Barley, you know, we're looking to support the farmers in as many ways that we can. One of the farmers may have grown a different grain that we may have also distilled. But
I think I may also know a bit about this, but very, very different thing, but would be very exciting to taste.
Yes, it is very exciting to taste, not to make you too jealous.
Yes.
But yeah, some exciting stuff in the pipeline, I think, is the diplomatic way that will mean I probably won't lose my job.
And we would not want that to happen because we need you to come back for future drams. Amazing. Let's bring Rupert back in. Hello. How are you doing?
Good. Yeah, no, very, very interesting hearing about that Port Charlotte. Wonderful. Need to try it.
It's so good. Now, while we have a little chat for a couple of minutes, in Andy's absence, Andy always has this job because I hate doing it. We always ask people what their dram of the box is, which is tricky because I know not everyone's tasted all 5, but you may have had a little nose. Let us know what you think. And then, we'll have a little chat and then we'll run through them all. But yeah, so Rupert, I wanted to ask you a little bit about, we've had a couple of drams this evening that have been in wine casks. Obviously, you have a wine background. What sort of wines do you think work particularly well with whiskey? Are there any that you would ever particularly want to get your hands on?
The answer is no, because it might be a bit sort of strict, but we don't put any of our whiskies into casks that weren't in James Eadie's ledgers.
Oh, okay.
So we literally stick to what he did during those sort of 40, 50 years that he was running it. And I mean, port casks, I have tasted whiskey in port casks and really like some of them. But I've never, to be honest, I've never been a fan of, when I was at McLeod's, we experimented with some wine casks and we didn't have great experiences. So, you know, now my hands are tied. We can't do wine casks, but port I would like to have done, but we stick to sherry, masala, Madeira, those sort of things.
There's a whole world of flavour in like fortified wine casks for sure.
Oh, yes.
And Fraser,
Sauterne would be interesting, but you know.
Did Glenmorangie do a Sauterne cask a little while?
I think they have, yeah.
Yeah, I think they did. Yeah, very like I found the texture of it really, really interesting, which is really cool.
But Port Charlotte has also released a Sauterne finish. It's very, very good.
Tell us about
that. Yeah, so it's actually the initial. It's a very complex maturation profile that I could get geeky with, but we'd probably be here all day, and I know we're tight for time already. It's a combination of bourbon and sherry matured whiskey that's been finished either for 2 years or 1 year for the various different components in Sauterne. So the smoke and the flavours from the Sauterne go incredibly well together. It's an all-timer for me of Port Charlotte.
It's amazing. And yeah, I mean, what are the other question I always want to ask everyone, but we rarely have time, but I'm going to do it while we've got the votes coming in. What are you both drinking at the moment that you're really enjoying? I always love this question because it is like, oh, what should I add to my drinks cabinet?
Well, I'm sure I'm not alone in having quite a few bottles open at any one time, and they're not all our own whiskies because you know you've got to keep learning about others as well. I do have a very soft spot for Laphroaig. It's probably the first Islay whiskey that I ended up working with it very closely when John Campbell was there. So at the moment I've got a 25-year-old Laphroaig open, which is amazing, absolutely amazing.
Good stuff, sir. Good stuff. What about you, Fraser? What are you enjoying?
Well, you might be surprised to hear this, and I know I'm enjoying a Port Charlotte just now, and I do love a peated whiskey, but I would say if you were to hold a gun to my head, I would say I'm more of an unpeated man.
Ooh, interesting.
For me, I always go back to a Balvenie. I like a Glengoyne as well, a Glenmorangie. I think with being a distillery on Islay, it's very easy to look inwardly and focus just on the spirits that are made here. And don't get me wrong, I love all of them. I think the whiskey that's made here is all incredible. It's all obviously for different times, different occasions and whatnot. But I do like a Speyside kind of style myself. But yeah, Balvenie is a personal favourite.
I just think we are so lucky in whiskey because it genuinely is a sector where competing companies are all friends. Everybody appreciates a good dram, and everyone knows that people love to have like a whiskey library. So it's like just appreciating each other's craft, which is great. Right. I'm going to hold on to your tasting glasses, everyone. Try and go through as many of these as I can. Lots of votes coming in. So we've got Steve Common Williams, Port Charlotte, hands down. Lots of votes for Port Charlotte from Dave and Malcolm, but Teaninich getting a good nose in as well. Neil Bolton, Port Charlotte or James Eadie, can't decide. Joint first. And he would tell you off for having a joint first, but I'm going to allow it. It's like asking who's your favourite child, says Clive. They were all different, but I love them all. TOCD, didn't get a chance to try the Green Spot yet. Very tough this month, but I'll go with the Teaninich, but they're all very, very good. Anthony Mullins, amazing box this month. Well done, Pour and Sip. We'll pass it on to the team. I don't choose, but they have done an incredible job. But my faves are Armorik and Port Charlotte, both of which are winging their way to me. Good stuff. Port Charlotte followed by the Teaninich. We've got Ali. Honestly, this is the first time I've had the tie in a box between the Teaninich and the Port Charlotte, both very different but excellent examples. We've got lots more ties. We've got Port Charlotte, Teaninich, joint third place for the others. Dave Stanton, again, you two actually are coming out genuinely top, which is incredible.
And this hasn't been fixed.
No. You can look back at the thing. Honestly, I'm just reading out what we've got. Your Uncle Vanya, who I haven't heard much from this evening. Wonderful to hear from you. I drink a lot of Port Charlotte and I love Bruichladdich everything. But today I'm very happy with the Teaninich. Can't wait to try more James Eadie. Dave Stanton, Port Charlotte, just. Malcolm says, hats off to Rupert, 25-year-old Lefroy. And we've got the Bird is the Word, Port Charlotte too. Basically, top drams. Well done, folks. Good work. Be proud of yourselves.
Very good.
Good stuff. So thank you so much, everyone. Honestly, we've had the best guests. Thank you to both of you for joining us and to Paul, you obviously had to shoot. It's been a blast. I've loved it. Thank you so much for coming to chat and share a dram.
Thank you, Kristy. Great job. Yeah, you've looked after us very well.
Really enjoyed it. And
yeah, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure, and thanks to everyone for watching.
Yeah, you must.
Thanks if you voted Port Charlotte.
Yes, you get a bonus. Please, both of you, come back whenever you can, whenever we have your drams in again, because you've been excellent guests. Same for Paul as well. And we are back on the 8th of December for a Christmas Pour and Sip. So until then, don't forget the Advent calendar if you're in the market. Keep in touch with us on Instagram and Twitter. We want to hear from you on Facebook as well. And yeah, happy dramming. Enjoy, folks, and catch up with you all soon.